Hello, Sven. How are you? Give me just 1 second. Something has happened here. Uh, where do you go? So, something strange has happened. I'm live, and Sven has completely disappeared from my screen. For some reason, I think he got disconnected. So, if you give me a few seconds, we'll work on it again. So hopefully he's gonna call me. Um, and this has never happened before, but you know, these things happen. So I had the chance to meet Sven Lindblad, many years ago, and I'm really excited to have him um, here with us. So hold on 1 second. He's back. Hello, Sven. Can you hear me? You completely disappear. I'm
I
glad that
know,
you're
but
back.
I hope I'm back.
Okay. So I was just introducing yourself, and I was just saying that I'm really excited and honored to have you on this humble program. So thank you.
Thank you, KIKE.
So before I start, because I don't want to forget this, I want to thank you for your vision and your ventures, because whatever you have conceived in your life has had a strong impact in my career and my life, and I'm sure it's not only me but many other people out there. So for that, I just want to say thank you, and hopefully this interview will be a good way to find and discover the person behind the personality. All right. So, Sven, let me start with a very simple question, right? How would you describe the world to someone who has never had the chance to travel?
That's an interesting question. Well, the world is a wondrous place. It has extraordinary diversity above and below the sea, uh, tremendous archaeological sites globally, uh, beautiful and interesting cultures all over the world. And you must always recognize the fact that whatever you have in your life at home is a small fraction of what exists out there in the world. And at the same time, we all have to recognize that the world has a multitude of challenges, and in many ways, I think travel has the opportunity to help people both see the wonder and see some of those challenges and become more invested in what they possibly can do about that in relationship to something they have developed an appreciation for.
And absolutely. So there's a second part of this question. So if you had to describe, I think, or I believe you love the ocean and swimming with whale sharks and mantas. So if you had to describe the ocean to someone who has never seen it or had the opportunities to swim, which words would you use to describe it? I asked the same question to Christina Mittermeier the other day. So
Yeah,
it's quite interesting to hear the different perspectives.
well, I would say that there's so many answers to that. One is that you probably will never see so many beautiful shades of blue as when you're underwater, and blue is a wonderful color. Um, you'll see a myriad of color and shapes and forms, uh, both from the perspective of coral geological formations and the diversity of fish life that's in the sea. I mean, every time I go diving, and I just came back from French Polynesia, I was there for 2 months, and we traveled 2,800 miles and took 2, 3 dives a day during that period. And the thing I think about being under the water more than anything else that I never stop thinking about is how did all of this diversity develop? There
Absolutely.
are all these shapes, all these colors, and they all have a purpose. And
Mhm.
somehow that just evolved, and it's just this incredible system of just unique architecture that makes all that
Absolutely.
possible.
Now that I'm so involved in education, that's something that crosses my mind all the time. There's so much beauty, but so much perfection at the same time. And it's pretty
Mhm.
incredible when you think about it. So you have had the opportunity to travel extensively the world. with very unique access, right? You've been lucky. There's lucky people. I consider myself very lucky too. Um, what changes have you seen in the world, in what we consider our home, our planet? And what would be the biggest concern regarding the future? What do you think we should be scared of, or we should put our attention into?
Yeah. So, when I was in my early 20s, from 1969 to about 1977, I lived in Kenya, and I traveled all over East Africa and Southern Africa. And in the beginning, I worked in a national park called Tsavo National Park, and in Tsavo, you had the largest population of black rhino anywhere in Africa, and also the largest population of elephant. And one day, I was a little, no, I was a little, I won't say bored necessarily, but I was a little like I wanted to go out and do something sort of fun. So I went out to see how many rhinos I could find in a single
Uh-huh.
day, and I found 59 individual black
Uh,
rhinos on that day. 10 years later, I went back to Savo and I spent a week there, and I couldn't find a single rhino. They had been essentially poached out, driven to near extinction. And it really was at that moment that I said to myself, wow, man has way too much power to
mhm.
be able to do this in a decade, to take the largest population of a creature and obliterate it in a decade. And that had a huge effect on just my thinking ever since that single moment of that recognition. And I think we've all had those moments in one form or another, where something happened in our lives that completely influenced our trajectory. And that was certainly the moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And changing the tone a little bit before we go into two serious matters, I'm going to ask you what is probably the most important question of this interview. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Because my intuition tells me that you really like ice cream. I'm not really sure, like this. I get these messages sometimes. So am I right? Like you like ice cream?
No, no, you're wrong. I don't like ice cream. I love ice cream.
Okay.
I would eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if that didn't cause a problem.
Okay.
I think my favorite is strawberry.
All right, all right. You see,
Yeah.
my sources provide me good information here and there. So now seriously, Sven, uh, what do you think has been the most or the biggest lesson in your career? If you had to choose something that has been extremely meaningful and the greatest lesson, what would that be?
Well, I think the greatest lesson, I guess, is first of all, I've spent a lot of my life in natural areas in Africa and Antarctica and Indonesia, all over the world. And I think the greatest lesson is I spent a lot of time with a lot of wonderful people who have taught me that the relationship between us as humans and all of these wonderful natural forces is both a great joy and incredibly important. And that gets reinforced all the time uh, as I've met these extraordinary people and in these extraordinary parts of the world. And
Hmm.
um, and I think if there's one thing I'd love to believe is that we are a part of nature. We are not apart from nature. And the quicker we kind of get that into our thinking uh, on a more broad basis, we'll be happier. We will ultimately do more to protect this wonderful planet that we have, and as I said, we'll be way happier and way better off.
Absolutely. It's very interesting for me to hear your answer because before we started, I was just telling you that I've been working with Lindblad Expedition. I think it's my year number 10th. And
Hmm.
if I had to choose something from my whole career or journey, is all the people that I met and how many things I've learned.
Hmm.
They transform me completely. So I love when you mention like people you have crossed paths with. So as you know, I've been working on an educational bilingual education project for almost 4 years now. So something that puzzles my mind is how to inspire future generations. You know, the mission of my project, The Adventures of Pili, is inspiring children to aspire. So I really respect your vision, and this idea is in my head every single day. What do you think we need to inspire future generations, especially today, that we're so attached to technology that it's almost impossible to disconnect? That's a struggle that I have with my daughter, as she loves reading, but I try to keep all iPads, everything away. Any points or thoughts about this idea, Sven?
Well, I've always felt that connecting kids with nature, whether it's in your backyard or a local river, in the community that you live, or the forest, or taking a hike up a mountain, or going to more exotic places. At the end of the day, kids respond incredibly well to being out in nature. And if we as parents make the effort to take them out there, they will require their connection to technology less, because they really will enjoy that, because kids love to play games, they love challenges, and there's just so much to inspire the imagination in nature.
Mhm.
So I would say my advice would be, get out there for your own sake and for your kids' sake. And there's a friend of mine by the name of Richard Louv, and he wrote a seminal book about our relationship to nature, and he determined scientifically that the disconnect between human beings and nature has uh, has negative issues or concerns way beyond what we possibly imagine. Cognitive concerns, health concerns, uh, and he was able to prove this through a series of studies, that our connection to nature is an extremely important idea. It's not just a pleasant idea or something that's fun. It's an essential idea in order to be a part of what allows us to grow and become adults, and in a meaningful and positive way.
Absolutely. And let's play what I call game of words, right? I do this with every guest. I'm going to give you a word, several words,
Hmm.
and I want you to tell me the first thing that crosses your mind, a memory, an experience, and try to elaborate a little bit if possible. So the first one would be Galapagos Islands.
Galapagos Islands, a wonderland of, of nature, where you're living in a community of animals and birds and fish and sharks, and where there's no fear.
Okay.
These creatures simply have not evolved to fear human beings. You're just another part of the system, and to be able to walk amongst animals that are not at all scared of you is a glorious experience.
Absolutely. I'm going to share something with you that probably you don't know. I was an intern at the Charles Darwin Station in 1998. That's where I
Whoa, I did not know that.
that's where I started my
Wow.
career as an intern at the Charles Darwin Station. So
Wow.
uh, Galapagos is close to my heart too. Second word, Sven heading.
Sven Heading?
Uh-huh.
Sven Hedin, you
Yeah,
mean?
well, I tried
Oh,
my
okay.
best, but
Okay. Sven, these sweet. Well, I get my,
remember that this is
by the
what I
way, by
call
the way,
this. This is what I call these reflections with an accent. I'm always gonna say something wrong. So no.
I no, I wasn't sure whether you said. By the way, when I go into Starbucks, my name is Tom, because I don't, my they mispronounce my name all the time. So,
Okay.
uh, so Sven Hedin was a Swedish explorer, uh, and he did a lot of work in Mongolia and the Far East. And actually, he was a hero of my father's, and my father named me Sven because of
Okay.
his respect for Sven Hedin.
Okay. So, somehow these words they have a link to your life. What about
Mhm.
if I say, hopefully I'm gonna pronounce it properly, Giacomo?
Giacomo. Oh,
Giacomo.
Giacomo. Giacomo is a parrot, a fictitious
Uh,
parrot
okay, you see.
that
All right.
yeah, that I invented and built stories around and told my kids more or less every night about stories of the adventures of Giacomo. And I'm hoping to turn it into a children's book at some point, because my daughter kept asking me, she said, Papa, can you write these down? Can you record these? And I never really thought about doing it, and I just, they were not prepared. They were just off the cuff. And I did start writing down some of these stories a while back, and it was so much fun because brought back great memories of telling stories to your children.
Absolutely. Some of my books, they came from my daughter asking me, what is the moon made of? And then I wrote a book about it. So if I say Delfina.
Delfina. Well, I was watching a documentary on whales, I think, and my wife and I are going to have a child in the next couple of weeks. And I said, we both love the undersea and we love dolphins. And what about having Delfina as her name? And we immediately gravitated to it. And that became her name at that moment. So,
Absolutely.
and I love the name.
Okay, yeah, I know. I do too. It's very, very original. What if I say, probably my pronunciation is not going to be very good, Tuamotus?
Tuamotus. Tuamotus are a group of islands in French Polynesia. Well, one thing I've discovered is not a lot of people know what French Polynesia is. They know what Bora Bora is, or they've heard the name Tahiti, but they haven't really focused on, or they don't really understand French Polynesia. But the Tuamotus are a significant number of atolls in French Polynesia, and they are a great place, particularly if you like diving and snorkeling and just the beauty of atolls.
Absolutely. Trade embargo. And let me put between brackets Vietnam and Cambodia.
Oh, well, trade embargo. So my father was the first person to bring visitors back to Vietnam after the war with Vietnam. And at that time, that was considered a violation of something called trading with the enemy. It's a congressional act, Trading with the Enemy Act. And his view was that it was unconstitutional to limit travel. And but the government thought differently, and they caused him a lot of problems, and froze his bank accounts and put him through the ringer. And it was actually quite sad, the repercussions of that. But he felt, and I agree with him, that travel should never be embargoed because by virtue of the fact that people are exposed to each other, different and better ideas emerge, and it's not an effective and a meaningful way to punish anybody.
Yeah, I agree with you too. If I say Charcot Bay.
Charcot
Charcot,
Bay.
yeah, Charcot.
Well, there's a cove there that was named after my father called Lindblad Cove, which I finally got to visit in. I think it was 2011, maybe. Not exactly sure what the date was, but it's a beautiful, beautiful bay, chock full of icebergs, and it was very emotional to see that. But it was named after him for his pioneering of Antarctic tourism and for his dedication to conservation.
Yeah, I was aware. I was on an Antarctica expedition in January in Charcot
Mm-hmm.
Bay. So I wanna, if that's okay with you, I just wanna show some photographs. Hopefully they're gonna work, and I wanna hear a little the story behind the images. What do they represent? If you wanna tell us something about these moments that I have randomly chosen, and I hope you're fine with them.
Sure. Well, this was the guy on my left is a gentleman by the name of Gary Nell. He was the CEO of National Geographic at the time, and we were launching our first new build ship back in 2017 called the National Geographic Quest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening.
No, that's it. That's you asked me to explain. That's it.
I thought you were gonna say something else. Sorry, I just shared a comment and
I could
a
say
little
more about it,
a little
but
distracted. So I have a few more friends. This is
okay.
completely live. This is just a conversation among friends here. So what about this one here? You're kind of covering a
Oh,
little bit
yes.
of, but that's better.
Yeah. Uh, Recently, Ecuador declared a significant increase in the marine sanctuary between the Galapagos Islands and Cocos Islands, and to be protected. And this was a gathering in the Galapagos. The lady that my arms are around her shoulder is Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's really, in many ways, the most extraordinary voice of the ocean. She's a magnificent oceanographer that just spends her entire life going around and doing everything she possibly can to get us to take
Hmm.
better care of the ocean and understand it better. On the right is Bill Clinton. He came for the ceremony. The Minister of Tourism from Ecuador, uh, the the president of Ecuador on my right, and then the president of Colombia,
Colombia.
and president of Colombia, Duque, right? The
Uh-huh.
former president. He's not
Former
any,
president because they just
yeah,
changed.
former, yeah, but recently former, and then the fellow on the far end is the Minister of Environment for Ecuador.
Fantastic.
And
So let
so
me, yeah, yeah,
it
go
was
for
it
it.
was it was a great gathering because people came from all over the world because it was a really a significant situation where there's a lot of progress being made between Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Panama to try and create marine protected corridors because obviously fish don't migrate within national boundaries. So international cooperation is a big deal. And so this was a great testament to international cooperation.
Absolutely. And actually, let me make a note here. I have a question. Which virgin do I need to put candles to so I can convince Sylvia Earle to come to this program? I've been trying and trying and trying with no success. I know she's a busy lady, but hopefully one day she will listen to my prayers and join me here. I'm just leaving this for the cyberspace to spread the
Yeah.
message. Eventually, I know it's a hard one.
Well,
Uh,
you're asking for to pray to a virgin, but so I obviously I obviously cannot fulfill that role, but I'd be glad to talk to her. I view her as my sort of
okay.
conscience, my surrogate mother in many ways. I think she plays that role for a lot of us, and but Kike, I'll gladly talk to her.
That would be awesome, Sven. Thank you. And then I
So
have a special photograph here. Hope you don't mind this one. I thought it was beautiful,
it
uh,
is.
and uh, and I just want you to tell me about this moment here because I saw
Yeah.
it and I gave myself permission to post it because I thought it was
Yeah.
awesome. So what's the
So
story behind
so
this
so
moment?
I left French Polynesia from our trip there on July 4th, and Kristen just stayed a little while longer. And you know, the humpback whales come from Antarctica uh, to French Polynesia, really starting in usually in later July, August, and and so we hadn't seen any of the migrating humpback whales coming up. But then she was staying in Moorea, and all of a sudden she saw some spouts out at sea and went out. And these were some of the first arrivals. It was a female, and uh, I don't know if you want to call it a child, but nevertheless,
A
that's what it
calf,
was. And
calf.
a calf, yeah, a calf, and was swimming with them, and they were very friendly, evidently. Unfortunately, I was so sad not to be there. But for anyone who's ever had a chance to be in the ocean with whales, it's a glorious experience. And French Polynesia in sort of August, September, October into early November is a great place to see them.
Absolutely, that's one of my most magical experiences I have had in the ocean. That's why I chose it. What about this photo here?
Oh, that's well, we,
You know,
uh,
I'm a storyteller and a photographer after all. So I chose this
yeah,
image because whoever took the photo really captured
yeah,
an essence and a moment, and that's why I included.
yeah. We were planning a really wonderful wedding celebration in in June of 2020, and obviously that was not going to happen. And so we had a ceremony of sorts in Hawaii last year, and we had it was it was just so beautiful, and just with some friends, nothing very big, and the rain was all of a sudden the rain was about to come, and we were sort of laughing because we had this idea to be outside and that we were about to get into a storm. But I just found it all quite wondrous, and it was a beautiful afternoon. And
It's a great moment and a great photograph.
yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. So this question might be a little awkward, but I want you to think about a big failure that turned into a great success. Can you recall something extremely negative that happened and it became a huge lesson or an inflection point in your career, your business, your any way you want to describe it or answer?
Yeah, well, one thing that happened to me way back in Alaska was, well, we had a I chartered the ship, and I was the expedition leader aboard, and the ship grounded, and and the the way the grounding was handled by the captain and the officers was not great, and it wound up there was a really bad accident that happened where one individual lost their life because of really a miscall, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and it really was an indelible moment, and it reminded me about, or made me really deeply realize how important it is to make sure that the people that you have in these positions uh, really know what they're doing, and have the capacity to handle situations that come up periodically that are not, that are dangerous or troublesome, or where judgment really matters. And so that was a huge moment for me to have had that experience. You still there, Kiki?
I am here. I'm here. I told
Okay.
you this could happen. No worries. No worries. I am back, Sven. This is to
Um,
make it more exciting to my guest.
but
What?
the
Yeah,
fact of the matter is that you are constantly having lessons. If you travel, you put yourself out there, you try new things. Um, uh, you know, you're constantly learning, and sometimes you're really out there on the edge in that process, and you come pretty close to 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 buying it. I spent a lot of my time doing reconnaissance work,
hmm,
and that means going into situations where you really are not 100% sure of what you're doing, where you're going, and all of the factors involved and what have you, and and there have been plenty of times where that's gotten to be kind of critical. Uh, but that's our job. We have to go out there, find these things out, make sure that we don't put our guests in harm's way. And so somebody's got to be the guinea pig.
absolutely, absolutely. So the other question that I have for you, everybody has spoken about COVID, the pandemic. I interviewed Akiko Iwasaki, one of the world top experts on COVID that I happened to photograph when we were at Yale University. So, um, what did you learn from the pandemic? I own some stocks from Lindblad, and I've been investing and doing things. I used to speak about different things in this channel. So, what did the pandemic taught you?
Well, I mean, lots of things. I mean, it's first of all, when the pandemic started, I think I think we and probably a lot of other people felt that it wouldn't last all that long, that we'd resolve it, and I don't think any of us really fathomed the sort of length at which this would, progress and last, and and you had to make so many adjustments because things were changing so rapidly in relationship to it. You know, at a certain point, you felt that okay, it's waning, and then it would come roaring back, and then you're really focused on different kinds of protocols, and you're trying to get as much in the beginning, in particular, before it was so knowledge about this was so widespread. You know, where are you going to get information? How are you going to develop your plans? Uh, what is your response going to be? What is the effect on the people who are planning to travel? What is the effect on the business? I mean, it was, it didn't have the sort of dramatic effects that certain events have, where they're very, very explosive and they come and they go. There was no, when 9/11 happened, for example, this was very dramatic. Things got very, very stressed about travel, but there was a certain kind of nobility that set in on the part of people that said, we're going to get out there. We're not going to let this,
Hmm.
we're not going to let this affect us. We're better than that. And there was a certain strength behind that. So it was explosive, and then it was followed up by something very positive in terms of behavior. Um, this is just, this is like, Chinese water torture. It's just been dripping and dripping and dripping. And it's put, honestly, it's put an enormous strain and stress on pretty much everybody in,
Absolutely.
in our organization, a lot of guests. And obviously, I think now pretty much, I don't know anybody now, practically hardly anybody who has not gotten this. I got it on I was diagnosed with COVID on
I
January
never got
5th.
I never got it.
You are very lucky. And I thought I was immune
For
to it
now.
because I didn't, I didn't go hide in a cave. Uh, I was reasonably cautious, but I got it on January 5th, and I realized I was mortal at that point. Uh, and and now I ask people, I don't pretty much don't know anybody who hasn't
Yeah.
had it at some point, except you, Kike. Now I
That's
realize.
good. That's good.
Yeah,
No, no.
and I hope
Um, uh,
I hope you're one of those people that's sort of immune to it. Uh,
yeah. Well,
but
I just have to say, Sven, that I traveled since the whole thing with Lindblad to Antarctica, different places, and the whole system that was in place, it was fantastic. I was uh, I was really concerned about traveling again. Many of our guests, your guests, asked me on a regular basis privately, "What do you think, Kike? How do you feel about it?" And I thought it was fantastic the way everything was handled, and I'll be traveling very soon again. So congratulations to everybody involved in this because it was awesome.
no, they've done. We got a lot of great advisors right out of the gate, and we put together a team who met every day to us and has throughout the pandemic and has assessed what new knowledge is there, what should we be doing, how do we keep everybody safe, uh, and as best as we reasonably can. And I think they've done an amazing job in terms of
Absolutely.
they, they've been relentless.
I agree with you. So let me give you some random names of people. And
Hmm.
if you have any connections to these people, I would like you to tell us what have you learned from them. Okay?
Hmm.
If you have learned anything from them, maybe I've chosen people you have not learned at all. So I hope
I'll be
I'm right.
honest.
Yeah, yeah, please, please.
If
What have you learned from Enrique Sala?
I've from Enrique, I've learned the extraordinary confluence of science, determination, and diplomacy. Uh, And he has developed this program called Pristine Seas that has been inordinately successful at convincing governments globally to protect large sections of their marine areas. So over now it's probably over 5,000 square kilometers of marine protected area in the last decade. But scientists represent a piece of the pie. Determination is an absolutely essential piece, and diplomacy is, I learned through Enrique, is an essential piece. And the
I think we have an issue with Sven. I think he has a very bad connection, so probably he's gonna call us back. So I hope everybody is enjoying this interview with Sven. As you all know, we're going live on my LinkedIn account, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and for the first time, we're broadcasting live to the Safina Center Facebook page. And let me tell you, I've been learning so many things by doing these interviews. There's certain people that is really hard to get a hold of, but eventually, when they decide to join and be part of this interview, it's so rewarding, personally inspiring. On a general basis, I've been bringing people that they have a connection to my life, whether I've worked with them, I have worked on projects along with them. It's funny, I met Sven, I think more than 10 years ago, um, and I always admire him as an individual. So hopefully he's back. I'm fantastic.
I don't know
You're
what
gonna
happened, but
you're gonna
here we
kill
are.
me from a heart attack. So I see somebody from. Okay, all right then. So let me tell you another person that I have here. Hopefully it's a good choice. Well, you already mentioned, but what about Pamela Fingleton, which I had the chance to travel with her in Baja California with her husband. And what about Pam? By the way, hello Pam. If you ever see this interview, it's been years, but I have great memories.
She had a lot of trouble trying to figure out how to set this up, but she'll see it at some point. But you know, this is going to take a few minutes because it's really an important story from my point of view, and sort of a
Okay.
fun one from. But I went to a friend of mine in 1977 and said, you know, I was struggling with, because I worked for my father for about 18 months, starting in 1977 into late 1977, 78 into early 1979, and I felt that he suffered greatly from not having an assistant that really helped organize him. He was a genius, but he was. He was not as reliable as he could have been, or perhaps should have been, and it caused him tremendous difficulties in terms of his business. So, so my friend says there's this woman called Pamela who has been working part time for Mrs. Rockefeller, and her children are of the age where she wants to get back into full time work, and maybe you should talk to her. I could introduce you. So I said, absolutely. So I met Pamela. I talked to her for like half an hour and explained to her what this job entailed. And she said she was interested. And I said, great, I'll be back to you. And she said, don't you want to see my resume? And I said, totally unnecessary. You're perfect. And so then, and then but I hadn't sort of asked about budgetary wise or any of the brass in the organization about whether it would be okay to find an assistant for my father. I figured that I would find somebody and then present that person and he would see the logic in it. But then I had decided, okay, I was going to leave the company and form my own company. And at the end of the day, I felt that I'm not so sure that I want to give Pamela to my father. So I So I called Pamela and I said, look, a little change of plans. How do you feel about this? And she said, okay. And so she and I started this company
I know.
that started out as called Special Expeditions in 1979 and eventually evolved into what it's called now. But she has been my right-hand person since 1979. So what's that? 89, 99, 2003, over 40 years, which is an
Wow.
incredible thing. I don't know anybody in my life as well as Pamela or for as long as Pamela. And she's been absolutely integral to the success of this company.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your
And
response.
she's like I feel like she's my sister now. So
Okay. Okay. The other person that I have here is what about somebody that has been very important in the development of my career? What about Carl Safina? What have you learned from Carl?
so Carl Safina is really the I don't know I describe him as sort of the poet laureate of the natural world. The first book I ever read of his was about bluefin tuna. And I felt that Carl was always very much in balance between the sort of conservation side of, in this
Mm-hmm.
case, the bluefin tuna, and the human side, people who depended on bluefin tuna for a living. And he was able to kind of intellectually navigate, uh, both those sides, which often one becomes totally opposed to the other. And uh, I wound up really engaging Carl a while, back in 2006. I wanted to put together a summit in the Arctic focused on climate change, and it was as a consequence of we were having drinks on the roof of my office, and Carl was there, and a couple of other people were there, and we kind of developed this idea about how to do that. Uh, and I've just always respected his voice, and I sit on his board now, actually, the Safina Institute, and it's not a huge nonprofit, but it's one of that I think plays a very, very valuable role because
Absolutely.
he's a great storyteller and is, really able to communicate.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough to travel with Carl and Patricia in Patagonia, and
Hmm.
we had long conversations. So that's how we got to know each other. And the Safina Center, supported the Adventures of Pity and was absolutely the reason that everything took a different round. The other person that I have here is you already mentioned her, Sylvia Earle. What have you learned from her?
Well, talk about determination. So, I
Okay.
mean, here's this woman who came up uh, as a female scientist, oceanographer, at a time where there were essentially no women in the field. And
Mm-hmm.
she just said, "Look, I have a lot to offer, and I'm going to be relevant in this world and be additive in this world." And she is the ultimate testament to determination. She's brilliant. She's passionate. She's lives and breathes the ocean, and wanting to do everything in her power to make people understand its importance. And that kind of determination and that kind of focus, uh, you don't see it very, very often. And what
Mm-hmm.
she's done in terms of activating interest in the protection of the ocean in so many different quarters, political quarters, scientific communities, laymen, across the board. She is the voice of the ocean.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Um, Let me ask you. You still have some additional time, Sven? Can I ask you a couple of extra
Sure, of
questions?
course, of course, of
Okay,
course,
I just want to know. I just want to know.
of course.
So, we're all in permanent evolution, right? That's one of my presentations that I do on board. How life and circumstances changes us every trip, every challenge. We become somebody different. What would you say? What would Sven from today tell Sven in his 40s? I told you I was
Well,
going to ask you questions a little bit different, you know.
well, first of all, uh, that's so long ago. I'm not even sure I can remember. But
I'm sure you can do it. I'm sure
oh no,
you can do it.
I know I can't. But when I was in my 40s, honestly, now I was, I, I think I was angrier as a person, from the perspective of I felt very strongly and very passionately about certain things, and I got very angry if people uh, didn't get it, so to speak. And uh, that is not a very productive way to accomplish anything. And so through the years subsequent, I really have come to respect the idea that we have to do a way better job of interacting with people who feel differently about what our belief systems are. We're getting so polarized, particularly in the United States, perhaps in other places. I don't know if as much, but certainly in the United States, and we there's this tendency to kind of demonize people who view things differently, uh, and I think there's just huge opportunity in embracing that uh, difference of beliefs, and really engaging those people um, in ways that can have an outcome that where you can learn from them and they can learn from you. I I I feel this deeply, deeply that this is an essential thing that we've got to learn how to do as human
Mhm.
beings, because otherwise we'll just keep driving a wedge between ourselves more and more, and that is not going to wind up solving anything for anybody.
And what advice would you give to the next generation of explorers? You know, we live in such a interconnected world, attached to technology. I think I read an interview you did somewhere where you mentioned the need of detaching ourselves and going back into nature. What is your position on these topics? What would you tell them? What would be your ideas to pass forward?
Well, I think, explorers, scientists, um,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who,
I said explorers, but you like, you know,
yeah, yeah. But I mean, explorers,
general term.
scientists, photographers. I mean, people who are out there and who are in some form or another, that being out in nature and amongst different cultures and in remote places, and that where that's their living, so to speak. Or I think it's incumbent to figure out how do you use the privilege of this exposure uh, to affect something positive for other people. I've often thought about. I remember it was a very frustrating day I had in Baja California. We were we were surrounded by sperm whales. There was an unbelievable aggregation. I mean, several dozen sperm whales, and they were behaving in extraordinary ways. And there were several people, including Roger Payne, who's one of the great,
Yeah.
uh, you know, who sort of brought the song of the humpback whale forward so that we could appreciate that. And I said, "Has anybody ever seen anything like this?" And nobody on the ship had ever seen anything like this. And we were like, uh, total souls. We were like 75 people on board, between our guests and our crew. I said, "Damn, this is really such a shame that it's only us 75 who have seen this and experienced this. And what can we do, to make this more available to people who don't have the good fortune to be in these places?"
Mm-hmm.
So I think communication is a very, very key aspect, because at the end of the day, you want constituents. You want people to care about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how are they going to care about it if they're not exposed to it? And not everybody has the same good fortune to be exposed as, some of, like myself. I feel
Mm-hmm.
I feel like an incredibly privileged person to have had the opportunities that I've had to be exposed to nature, culture, and history. And in many ways, that's one of the things I love about the business we have, because we have the opportunity to share that possibility with other people. But then there's a lot of other people who can't necessarily afford or don't have the time or circumstance to do that. And I think it's incumbent upon us to think about what are the creative ways in which we can make these experiences more meaningful to other people.
Mm-hmm. And eh, I love Lindblad as a company and how things have been put together in terms of the experience of traveling. If you had to describe the magic formula that has made Lindblad what it is today, what would be the elements that compose that formula? Which are the parts of the equation that you think has made it so unique?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's an organization that has been historically really driven by and created by explorers, naturalists, historians, people that we've brought together to sort of create the possibilities that we offer people. And then I think there's this real shared. Uh, it, every voyage on our I think is a really shared experience. Between the
Mm-hmm.
captain, the officers, the crew, the naturalists, the guests. It's like we're in this together. This is this unique moment in time where we get to share this experience together. And I think there's an essence to that, because very often in any enterprise there's cross purposes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where there isn't that sort of synergy of purpose. And I think we've managed to create a synergy of purpose. And, and so the idea is to go out there and to see beauty and wonder, and then to understand it from the perspective of its reality too, which sometimes means certain challenges that we want to have the ability to have a conversation about. Because again, all of us who get to go to these places, it heightens our it naturally heightens our concern about their well-being, right? And 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 so the confluence of having beautiful, well thought out, safely done experiences, and then how that makes you as an individual want to play more of a role in terms of
Mm-hmm.
how these places are sustained and protected. I think that's a powerful idea.
Yeah, it's really beautiful and connected to this response. I still remember I went to one of the places that I studied was University of Idaho, so I took courses with Sam Ham that
Ah,
I know it's been very connected with Lindblad. I discovered that years later. And I remember the term, obviously, I heard it, I used it many times after carrying capacity. How do you envision the future of expedition travel and how do you cap that carrying capacity so the ecosystems and the places they don't be taken over by us? What was your vision about that concept?
yeah. Well, number one, it's a concept or a question that I think about a lot, uh, and I'm really concerned about it. I mean, you for example, in our industry,
Yeah.
there's just been a massive growth of interest in expedition. Well, the term is expedition cruising or whatever, and there are a lot of people who have come into it uh, as a consequence of having defined that there is a lot of interest. And that absolutely means that there is going to be pressure on certain geographies. And I guess my concern is multifold. I'd hate to see these things become commoditized, these geographies become commoditized. I worry about that some people take what's necessary to be there for granted. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
place like the Antarctic, even though, I mean, I almost died in the Antarctic twice in the early 70s, the early 1970s when we were first there. We were pioneers there, but we didn't know as many things as we should have, and we had some hairy moments. But over the years, we learned. So if you think about it, we've been involved in Antarctica in one form or another since 1966, when my father opened up Antarctica. So we've learned a lot. And even now, with modern navigational skills and new technologies and such, you still have to know what you're doing, because it can change. It can change very, very rapidly. The winds can change. The visibility can change. The drifting of the ice can change. And so I am concerned that there are going to be accidents. And as a consequence of those accidents, the likelihood of regulation is going to, or the possibility of regulation is going to be, is going to like gravitate to the lowest common denominator. And that concerns me deeply. And I'm very much engaged in these conversations, globally about this question. It's not only about, are there too many people, but are they going under the right circumstances? Hardware is one thing. Like, there's a ship in the background that's the height of hardware technology. It looks like a big ship, but it only takes 126 people.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, but what's more important than that is who's in charge of that ship. What do they know? What is their experience? How capable are they of handling a negative situation? And I feel very, very confident that the personnel that we have are at the top of the food chain in terms of their expertise and their understanding. And that's because that in itself is the key requirement as far as we're concerned. Because otherwise, you do put yourself at risk. No question about it.
And Spain, and we will be coming to an end pretty soon. But what challenges do you think that lay ahead for Lindblad Expeditions? I'm sure you have had lots of meetings about these topics, and many times I talk about entrepreneurships and projects besides conservation. So, what do you think lays ahead as being like the top priorities for the company?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the top priorities are, well, first of all, there's more and more interest in this kind of the kind of travel that we and others offer, and in many ways that's a really, really good thing. I think what in my greatest dream would be that the travel industry more broadly recognizes the fact that we are all very, very much dependent on the health of these assets that we trade upon. So if the Galapagos, for example, just to pull that as an example, degrades in terms of its health, nobody's going to want to spend money or time going to degraded places. So I think there's a real opportunity for us as an industry to take this more seriously, that we are one of the, if not the biggest industry in the world, the travel industry. And we have the opportunity to get way more creative across the board to try and make sure that the places that we visit and that we want to expose people to are healthy, vibrant into the future. And I think that's our biggest challenge, because at the end of the day, there are so many forces out there that are, global warming and its effects, deforestation and its effects, overfishing and its effects. So we as an industry need to become more proactive as it relates to all of these subjects, because they affect our future very significantly. So it's the right thing to do. It's an essential thing to do. And if we do it intelligently, we can be quite powerful together.
I completely agree. So we're coming to an end, Sven, and I want to ask you something. Can you surprise me with something about yourself that normally people don't know? Something that you can tell me in public, and I'm not gonna be penalized by YouTube. You know, like I don't know. It doesn't have to be anything important. It can be anything.
Wow. Well,
See?
one thing is you know, for a guy who travels so much and people perceive can't sit still for more than 2 seconds, I actually love being at home. I
Okay.
actually love cooking. I actually love doing some of the more normal things
Okay.
that come across in life, and yeah. So I'm trying to think, Kike. That's a hell of a question.
You
Uh,
see, you like my questions, Ben?
I like your question.
I have another one.
I'll have to think about that one more broadly.
I have another one. Okay, so I see this YouTube channel. I told you that we already surpassed 1 million views, and growing slowly, all organic. So I see this as a time capsule for everybody that is interested in conservation and for future generations, right? So
Mhm.
I would like to ask you, what concept, idea, or lesson should your daughter Delfina never forget when she grows up? Because this crosses my mind every day. That's why I'm sending you my ball into your field.
Yeah. So the lesson, I mean, above all else, the lesson I would love for my daughter and for my other kids to embrace and to learn
Well,
is
I mentioned Delfina because he's about to come to this world.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Obviously, I
yeah,
know
yeah,
the
yeah.
others I'm
So
talking about
yeah,
on
but
being the baby.
yeah, but above all else is to have a is to as soon as possible begin and to continue for the rest of your life to have a deep love affair with our natural world.
Hmm. That's a fantastic answer. So my last question for you, I always finish all my communications, my emails, everything that I do with the expression "never stop dreaming."
Mhm.
That has always been in the back of my mind. That kind of defines what I do. So how would Sven-Lindblad grab this concept of never stop dreaming and address the audience, presence and future in this YouTube channel? What they should remember in connection with never stop dreaming and your own life?
Well, you know, it's funny. You know, now I'm 72 years old. I started out as a my career in East Africa as a photographer and as a naturalist, and then eventually got into business. And now my personal dream is I spent I don't know 30 or 40 years running on a day-to-day basis a business
Yeah.
and kind of got disconnected to some degree from what I actually love to do. I wasn't able to spend as much time doing it, but always have as your North Star, that you're heading towards doing the things that really make you happy, that really, really inspire you. Right now, I'm at just a glorious point in my life because I want to go out
Mm-hmm.
and really go back and really spend way more time exploring again, going back to what I was doing some 40 years ago.
That's
And
fantastic.
yeah, and because there's so much to learn and there's so much to see and there's so much that can come out of that that turns into ideas, that stimulate ideas that I think are meaningful. So, um, really, really ask yourself what makes you happy, what makes you excited, and do everything in your power to wind up, leading a life that heads either is
Mm.
in that direction or heads you in that direction.
Okay. Okay. And I have one last question.
Mm.
Um, what did you learn from your mother?
My mother was another. My mother is actually, by the way, my mother just turned 100. Uh,
Wow.
100. She lives in Malta, in the island of Gozo, which is just off of or part of Malta, and she also was somebody who I learned at a very young age had a determination uh, a zealous determination that made her very, very good at what she did. And I think determination is the opportunity to be successful. And she was tenacious and determined in spades.
That's
or
wonderful.
or is. I shouldn't say was, is.
All
She
right.
still is. She still is.
So, as Ben, I just wanna thank you for taking the time to chatting with me. It's a pleasure to see you so happy and energetic. I haven't seen you in a very long time, but I know you had other things to do, probably more important than being with me. But I truly appreciate that you took the time.
No, listen, it was a pleasure, and I am going to call Sylvia and say she should come on your show. I will do everything in my power to make that happen.
That would be awesome, Sven. So thank you so much, and I hope
All
our
right,
paths will cross again. Have a good
all
day.
right,
Thank you.
Kike.
Ciao,
Thanks.
ciao. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.